In the winter of 1878, Kansas was dying. The land was cracked and dry, the cattle were sick, and the sky hadn't wept in months. But something else arrived that year, something older than drought, older than dust. Four brothers, born under the same blood moon, disappeared into the woods behind their family farm. Locals said they were chasing the sound of thunder that didn't come from the sky. When they returned 3 days later, they were barefoot, silent, and smiling. But the kind of smile that makes your stomach twist, not joy, but knowledge. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. And when their father touched the oldest boy's shoulder, he felt at his knees like something unseen had crushed him. Within the week, their mother hanged herself with rosary beads. The neighbors claimed it was grief, but the town sheriff said her face was frozen in a look of understanding, like she'd finally seen the architecture behind the world, and it broke her mind. The town tried to forget, but forgetting doesn't work when something starts watching you. Crops began to grow in perfect symmetry, even in fields never seeded. Church bells rang at night, though no one pulled the rope, and a smell of iron and electricity crept through the town like a silent hymn. That's when the men in black wagons came. No markings, no names. Not lawmen, something higher. They took the brothers, not to a hospital, not to prison, but somewhere off the map. And what happened there? Not even the wind dares speak of it. You've never read about this in your history books. Because history is edited, not to protect you, but to control you. The moment those boys crossed back into our world, something ancient cracked open. And now, you're standing at the edge of that same opening, staring into the dark, hearing that sound behind your eyes. The question is, will you keep watching? Or will you pretend you didn't feel it just now? That shift in the air? The government said nothing. No press. No trial. No explanation. The names of the brothers were quietly erased from census records, school logs, and church baptismals. As if they were never born. As if they were a virus, and the system responded like an immune defense. But why? Because the brothers saw something. Not with their eyes, with the part of the mind you're trained to ignore. They crossed a threshold most men are conditioned to fear. A place where thought and reality blur. And when they came back, they carried a code. A frequency. A memory that didn't belong to them. The youngest, Benjamin, scratched that code into the walls of the holding cell where they were kept. Not words. Not symbols. Something else. Curves and lines that seemed to shimmer when stared at too long. A psychologist brought in to assess him tore out his own eyes within 3 hours. Why? Because this wasn't madness. This was a rupture. A forbidden signal pushing through the veil we're told is reality. And what terrified the system most is that the signal spread. Other inmates started chanting in perfect synchrony, a chant that had no language but carried weight. The guards began dreaming of massive machines buried under the fields. Machines with no operators. Machines that whispered. One by one, those guards quit, went silent, or disappeared. The psychologist's notes were confiscated. Every man who came close to the brothers left changed, or never left at all. This is why science refuses to study them. Not because there's nothing there, but because there's too much. It threatens the model. The idea that reality is clean, predictable, explainable. But these boys became a crack in the mask. And you've seen that crack now. You're waking up to something they fear more than chaos. Awareness. Not the kind sold to you by false gurus and dopamine puppeteers. I'm talking about forbidden sight. The knowledge beneath knowledge. If you feel that shift inside, that pull towards something ancient, comment the phrase, "I am beyond the pattern," twice below. Not for me. For yourself. That phrase is a key. 3 months after their removal, a telegram arrived in town. No name. No sender. Just 7 words. They dream what they were made to forget. That same night, the town's well turned black. Here's what you need to understand. These boys were never just victims. They were conduits. Vessels chosen, or designed, for something beyond the reach of your education. This wasn't an accident of geography. It was a convergence. Kansas, 1878, wasn't a sleepy place. It was a testing ground. A place already humming with magnetic distortions, ley lines, and subterranean signals older than Christianity. And someone, some hidden hand, knew exactly when to activate them. I want you to consider a possibility you were trained to mock, that our history is not linear, but engineered. That certain families are watched for generations, for patterns in behavior, in blood, in frequency. That every few decades, a note awakens. A human becomes a fracture point, and if left unchecked, that fracture spreads, revealing the architecture beneath reality. The brothers were a fracture, but instead of letting it spread, the system contained it. Not with violence, but with silence. Not with truth, but with replacement. They built a lie so convincing, the memory of those boys was swallowed by time itself. But you're not like the others, are you? You can feel it. That electric tension in your gut when something is being hidden in plain sight. That heat at the back of your neck when a story doesn't add up. It's not paranoia. It's a signal, the same one they tried to bury in those brothers' minds. Every great civilization has its dark priests, not robed mystics. I mean scientists, historians, bureaucrats. The ones who cleanse the past so it never threatens the present. They don't fear chaos. They fear awakening. Because a man who sees the hidden pattern is no longer controllable. And now you've seen it. So here's my question. Why do you think you were allowed to hear this? 17 years after their disappearance, in 1895, strange reports began to surface from settlements near the old Kansas site. Crops that grew overnight. Animals giving birth to offspring with mirrored organs. Children speaking in dead languages. Languages even scholars couldn't place. But the most disturbing event? A traveler, no name, no past, arrived barefoot in a nearby town, muttering 7 words over and over. They dream what they were made to forget. He wore a coat that predated the Civil War, stitched with the same sigils found in Benjamin's cell. And on his spine, carved like bone graffiti, were 4 names, first names only, matching the brothers. No one ever found out who he was. He vanished 3 days later. But what's more chilling is what came after. The town hall burned. The only copy of the 1878 census went up with it. That's not coincidence. That's containment. The suppression of truth isn't always loud. It's quiet, surgical, disguised as fire, as malfunction, as natural disaster. But behind every erasure is a force that decides what you are allowed to remember. These are not men in suits. These are institutions with no face, operating above governments, preserving a map you were never meant to see. A map of what? Power. Because once you know the past has been manipulated, not by winners, but by engineers of reality, you begin to ask dangerous questions. Who selects what is taught? Who funds the textbooks? Who chooses the acceptable version of events? And what gets buried beneath the official narrative? These questions do not make you crazy. They make you awake. The truth is, every generation has its 4 brothers. Not always literal. Sometimes it's a movement, a manuscript, a man. Each time, the system moves quickly to erase it, to twist it, to sterilize its memory. But you're not meant to forget. That's why you're still watching. You're part of the next pattern, the next fracture. And what you choose to do after this video decides what comes next. What if I told you the brothers never died? Not in body, not in consciousness. They were never meant to be understood, only activated. They didn't return to Kansas to live. They returned to seed, to spread an idea so primal, so subversive, that even now, it pulses in the subconscious of every man who rejects the lie. It's not about the boys anymore. It's about you. Because here's the secret the elite fear above all. Awakening is contagious. And what you felt through this story, the stillness, the pull, the fire in your gut, that's not entertainment. That's initiation. You've been watching symbols all your life, hidden in architecture, corporate logos, sacred geometry, but you were never taught how to see them. They told you it was superstition, madness, conspiracy, because if you learned to read them, you'd find the real history, the forbidden history, the kind that rewires the mind, that burns away obedience, that shatters the illusion that this world is under your control, when in fact, it's under theirs. But here's where their control ends. When a man stops obeying the script, when he remembers that this reality was written by those who feared his power, remembers that institutions are not sacred, they're scaffolding around a prison of perception, remembers that transformation isn't a myth, it's a choice. So choose now. Comment the phrase, "The pattern ends with me," twice. Seal it into the algorithm, into your mind, into the echo that those watching you will never be able to erase. The story of the 4 brothers was never about 4 boys. It was about a signal that reached through time, silence, and fire, and found you. Now that you've heard it, there's no one hearing. So ask yourself one final question, and answer it with your life. Were you born to forget, or were you born to remember? Fade to black. A low hum continues. Then silence. Still here? Good. That means something inside you didn't just watch. It shifted. That's what this was always about. Not a story. Not content. But contact. You've just brushed against the machinery behind the world. The truth isn't just that the four brothers' return changed. It's that you did. You've now seen the edge of the veil. You've seen how history lies. How power edits. How truth bleeds when touched. And how you, just by knowing this, have become a danger to the order they built. Understand this. You are not broken. You are breaking free. The whispers you'll hear after this video, in your dreams, in the static between radio stations, in the way your skin reacts to certain names, that's the code waking up inside you. They trained you to mock this, to roll your eyes, to call it crazy. That was the first lie. The second was telling you you're alone. But you're not. There are others, men watching this right now, across Brazil and beyond, who felt the same internal quake, who typed the phrase, who remembered the signal. And whether they know it or not, they're already part of something ancient. Not a cult, not a group, a current that flows beneath empire, beneath religion, beneath science. A current of those who remember what was buried. This was never just about Kansas. Kansas was a crack. You are the earthquake. Now go back into the world and watch how different it looks. How the fake smiles flicker. How the headlines ring hollow. How your own instincts feel louder. You've crossed the line. And from this point on, you are unwritten. They buried the four brothers. They burned the records. But they couldn't burn the signal. And now it lives in you. This isn't just a video. It's the fracture they failed to seal. If you felt it, comment twice. The pattern ends with me. The pattern ends with me. And share this with one man you believe might awaken.